Okay. All right. So, welcome. Uh, Abby and I are going to go through some brush stuff in Photoshop and the iPad version of Fresco. Um, I'll have the chat open if anybody wants to ask any questions or whatever. But Abby, how's it going?
It's going good.
Good.
Real good.
Okay. So you're just learning. You're just learning like using different brushes and different things in Photoshop. And
Yeah, yeah.
questions about some stuff. So let's uh, let's jump in. What uh, what do you want to go through?
Um, I think I'd like to go through how to create new brushes and some sketching and I don't know, maybe just how you use a lot of the brushes.
Okay.
I'm open to learn.
All right. So I'm in Photoshop on a Mac, um, and you can jump in over here. These are all. So this is in your brush settings menu.
Okay.
I'm gonna make the screen be full screen so that it's easier to see. So these are in your brush settings menu, and I've got a video that kind of goes through each one of these, but the most important ones I think are the shape dynamics. Um, and then there's a couple other ones like scattering and stuff like that can do some things. Sometimes color dynamics, but I don't like to touch that too much. But basically, in shape dynamics, if you come over to where it says control under size jitter, so
Okay.
anything that says jitter is going to add like a random variable where it's just going to kind of like randomize that element. So if it says size jitter and you increase that to some percentage, 50% or whatever, then 50% of the time it's going to randomly change the size of your brush.
Okay.
And so you do that if you wanted like, a really wiggly line or something like that. Or if you wanted it to like a fountain pen, um, and how that kind of like spits out extra ink or something. I personally hate size jitter, and so I take it all the way down to zero all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but in control, you've got these different options of off, fade, pen pressure, pen tilt, stylus wheel. If you have like a Wacom Cintiq or a Surface Pro or some sort of tablet that has pressure sensitivity, then these can come into play. Some things I don't believe like the Surface Pro has tilt recognition of the stylus like the
Okay.
Wacom does. But pen pressure is usually the best one to go for most of these. Minimum diameter is going to be like how small it gets, and I like to taper off to a fine point in most situations because I'm mimicking like traditional inking, and so I usually
Yeah.
have minimum diameter to like zero. Um, and then depending on the shape of the brush, this whole angle jitter thing, it can kind of like rotate and things like that. So um, on this one, the control is direction, and you have two main choices on direction. You've got initial direction and direction. So what it does is it watches the direction that you're pushing the stylus across the screen, and it'll line up the shape of the brush. And so every brush in Photoshop is made out of a stamp. Basically, it's a single image, and you're looking at in that image, you're looking at um, how frequently that is duplicated, and then when it's duplicated, what happens. And so if you go into like brush tip shape, you'll see down here at the bottom spacing. And
Oh,
if I were to push this spacing up, you'll start to see the tip of that shape.
right.
And so they had this brush set at spacing 1%. Um, and that means that it's going to overlap. That stamp is going to overlap a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I typically never go above 6% unless I'm trying to do like Kirby Crackle or do something that has like defined shapes that I want. And then under scattering, you can also get some of that. So if you push the scatter apart, let's go. Let's see. This one's not working. Let me switch brushes here. So we do a normal brush. We'll turn scattering on, and nothing is happening. Oh, there we go. Scatter. So you can see that you can kind of push that apart,
Yeah.
right? And then you can control that with pen pressure or tilt or whatever, or rotation. And so if you wanted that scatter to be only when you want it, like I only want the brush to scatter when I push down really hard on the stylus, then you could put pen pressure on here, and then you could turn this up or down, and it'll kind of do that. So
Okay.
um, so those are the main things. I mean, there's a lot more, wet edges and like dual brush is where you actually have two different brush profiles, where not profiles, but two different brushes, and one kind of texturizes the other. So one gives you like the main shape of the brush, and the other gives you a texture inside of that shape.
Oh, cool.
And so there's things like that. Um, you don't need to know too much about these because you can kind of append these brushes. And so I know you know how to do this because you figured this out last week, but I'll just show everybody else. Um, there are all these brushes, and usually there's just a few up here. Okay, if you go like
Okay.
hard round, and you come over here and you right click, you're going to have two main controls here. You've got the size, right, and then you've got the hardness. And so if I go like this and I draw, and I can press the right bracket to increase that. That's going to give me something like that. If I right click and I turn hardness down to 0, then the edge of that becomes softer.
Okay.
Right? This can be really helpful when you're dealing with like masks or things. Like I'll paint masks or whatever. Sometimes you just want to like come in and kind of soften something up. But most of the time, for the style that I do, I would do hardness 100. Um, but then I can take this one hard round, okay, and I can go over to brush settings and I can turn shape dynamics on, and I can turn control pen pressure for size jitter. And you notice that now I can draw, and when I push harder, it gets bigger, and when I let up, it gets softer or smaller. And I can do that. I can do that with anything. So I can come in and I can say, let's see, color dynamics. Okay, and I'll go foreground, background, and so as I as I as I lift up on the pen, it gives me the background color. As I push down on the pen, it gives me the foreground color.
Okay.
And then if I turn jitter on, then it'll kind of jitter back and forth between those colors.
Cool.
So you can
Way
kind of,
cool.
yeah, so you can kind of adjust things like that. I typically recommend that you just go with something that Kyle Webster has made.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to make some changes to it, you can make some changes to it. So let's let's go like one of my favorites here. I've got this big inking thing. Let me give myself a new layer. So I'll come in and ink stuff, and it tapers off to a point. I usually work on a much larger canvas, so I'll just shrink this down a little bit. So I can come in and do this type of thing, and then I can go over to brush settings, and I can change some of this stuff up. And then down here in the lower right hand corner of that menu, it says create new brush, and I can click on create new brush, and I can name it whatever I want. And there's a couple different settings there. And when I do that, it'll add that to my brush panel. So I can go in and I can alter stuff and then create a new brush. And I can even come in and click in that file folder thing and create a group.
Oh.
So if it's like if I because I mean you go into some of these and they're just hundreds
Hundreds of them.
of brushes,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to remember which ones are which and which ones you used before, and it only saves the last 6 or 8 or whatever. But then you can come in and you can just create your own, and you can say, okay, this is one of my favorites, so I'm going to put it in my favorites folder,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can come back to it and use it again. And you can also delete these and whatever else. So that's one of the easiest ways to do it, is to make a file folder, and then you create your own copy of that brush and kind of put it in.
Okay. Because
And then
that
when
way you can change like the size of, like you can squash the roundness of your brush or whatever. You can change different things.
yeah, yeah. So that way you could go in and you could say, I like this one brush, but you know when I'm
Make
working on a
the
canvas
angle.
size of like 4,000 pixels, it's way different than when I'm working on something that's like 1920 by 1080. And so you
Right.
could actually have two different size versions of the same brush and just stick it in that folder,
Cool.
or have one 4K folder and one HD folder, and then you could just use whichever brushes depending on which thing you're in.
Sweet.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of fun. And then let me just show everybody really quick. In the upper right hand corner, there's a hamburger menu, all the little horizontal lines. And if you open that hamburger menu up, I'm in the brush panel. So if you go to the brush panel, if you don't see the brush panel, you can go to Window, Brushes, and it'll show up there. And then you click over here, and there's all kinds of different things: brush name, brush tip, all the different stuff. And then one of the things is you can append default brushes. So if I click on that, um, it's going to ask that, and it'll just add a bunch of stuff like that. Those are kind of the defaults. I'm just going to delete those because I already have them. And so if you don't have any of those default ones, you can do that.
Okay.
You can import brushes, and so you could go to like Friendin or Circworks, or there's a bunch of people that sell brushes for different applications, and you can buy those brush packs, and then you would just download them, and they're ABR files, and then you can just kind of put them in by importing the brush. Or if you click on Get More Brushes, what it's going to do is it's going to open the Adobe Photoshop website, and there's a page in there where you have all of these different brushes, and each
Yeah.
one of these is a pack of a ton of different brushes. And so, like this fall, it's got all these different things. I could say download, okay, and I'll put it in the downloads. And then once it downloads this ABR file. And so I'd go into Photoshop, and I'd go import brushes, okay, and then I would click wherever I downloaded that, usually your downloads folder, click open. It imports that in, and now I have all of these other brushes, and so I can come in and just start to kind of experiment with, um, with what these new brushes do. And if you push harder, or rotate your pen or tilt your pen, they'll do different things. And so that,
So cool.
yeah, so that's kind of the basics of it. Um, and then controlling Photoshop beyond that is where you'd use like blending modes and transparency and masks and different things like that. So
Okay.
yeah, so you had some more questions on different things. I'd be happy to kind of go through different stuff,
um.
or I can show you watercolors in Adobe Fresco on the iPad. Do you want to stay in
Okay.
Photoshop for a few minutes, or do you want to jump
Yeah.
over to?
Let's stay in Photoshop for a couple minutes. Can you show me your sketching process? I guess I'm just really curious about how you go about that.
Yeah, so let me hide these layers. And so what I'll do is I'll open up a new layer, And just because of what I'm used to, I usually sketch in blue and then I'll switch to different colors, but you can kind of sketch in whatever. And I'll find a small brush and you can go in, there is like a pencil. I don't really like the default pencils that they've got, but if you
Mm-hmm.
go into the brush settings, there are actually some pencils. And if you go like HB, you'll go into the mega
Oh,
pack, which goes into the drawing box, and they have different pencils. I like the softer ones,
cool.
and it just gives you kind of a little bit of that. Now there's, I think I should have saved it. Some of these, is it this one? Let's make this bigger. Not that one. Um, Let me try it. There used to be a brush called the Tilterific. Maybe this one. No. Okay, that one's not bad. Um, okay, that one's okay. All right, so this brush, which is called Tilterific Medium Texture.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can kind of come in and shade a little bit with it. And what I'm doing is
Oh.
I'm turning my, just like you would on a pencil, I'm turning my
Mm-hmm.
stylus to the side and I'm going that way. But when I turn it up like this, then it draws a fine point. And
Cool.
so it's
So
just,
it emulates like a pencil and okay,
yeah.
cool.
And it's much, in my opinion, it's much, the one that they use in Adobe Fresco on the iPad is much more like a pencil. And
Okay.
so I actually mostly prefer to sketch. Um, I mostly prefer to sketch on the iPad.
Okay.
Um, but anyway, if you just go in and choose pencil, and they've got hard, and there's this charcoal one, or whatever. And I like the like softer ones, um, just because I want to do something lighter. So I'll just find one of these. I don't really have one in Photoshop that I really like, but I'll find one of these, and then I'll usually turn the opacity down on the layer, um, or you can turn the opacity down up here. So on your options bar at the top of Photoshop, one of the options is that you have opacity, and another option is flow.
Okay.
Uh, and so you can kind of go in and you can go in and kind of control those. And so I can go like this, or I can take my opacity down to 25%, and it's lighter,
Okay.
right? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of that. I'm gonna grab this other pencil. Okay. So the way I'll normally do this is I'll bring the opacity of the layer down, and then I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to really lightly. You got to give me something to draw if I'm going to sketch something. What are we sketching right now? Let's let's
Oh,
let's let's
what
come
did
up
you
with
say?
something. Let's do a
Um,
skull. Those are easy. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to just, as far as sketching goes, I'm not super concerned about putting perfect lines down. I'm more concerned about kind of just fleshing out the shape, right? And so I'm going to kind of just go in and um, it, this is where like a big Cintiq kind of beats out an iPad. Is if you're using your shoulder and your back and your elbow more than you're using your fingers and your wrist, you'll have more fluid movements. And
okay.
so I'm just going to come in here and kind of just give myself some kind of guidelines and things. And then the nice thing about this is because I'm in Photoshop, I can come in and I can adjust things. So I initially drew this way too small. Command T, and I can make it bigger, right? While I'm doing transform, I can come in and I can, if I hold Command or Control on a PC, then I can adjust this bounding box, any way that I want. by just grabbing these corners.
Yeah.
And I can also come in and go to edit, go to puppet warp or perspective warp. And either of those, you can kind of come in and you can kind of adjust things like that. So with puppet warp, it's like I can come in and it's a lot like the puppet pin tool in After Effects. And so you can just grab little bits of things and kind of move them around.
Oh, sweet.
So then, then you can kind of keep sketching. And the nice thing is you can come in at any point in time and I can switch colors to kind of give myself, a little bit more differentiation on my rougher kind of outline stuff. Um, and then I can create a new layer and start, sketching over the top. And so if I get like my basics of where I want this to be, if you hit E, it'll bring up your eraser. B
Okay.
goes back to your brush. I'm gonna come back in here, give myself a little bridge of the nose here. Okay, I'll come out with some teeth, jawline. This is gonna come in with cheekbone. Okay, so I'm just kind of roughing this out here. And then I can come in and I can add a new layer on the top of this. And I can turn this down even further. And then on my
Just
new
turn the
layer,
layer down, the opacity of the layer, not the.
yes, right. So the opacity of the layer, I just turn that down to 80%. And now over the top of that, I can come in on this newer layer and I can start, kind of being a little bit more confident in my line choice. And I'm just doing this over the top of the layers. And this layer doesn't have any opacity turned on.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
Then,
great.
right, then I can turn that down again. And once I get something that I like, then I can come in and then for my style of illustration, I would come in and start inking over the top of this. And so I'd go back to my brush panel here, um, delete my search terms, collapse all this stuff, and go find my. There we go. Oh no, did we do it? Oh, it's in test brushes. Okay, so we go find this, and then I turn black on. And that's when I come in and I'm going to be a little bit more careful. And I try to, for me, I try to taper it off at the end, just depending on what style you're looking for. You can. Nice thing is while you're drawing, you can press the right bracket to to increase the size and the left bracket to decrease the size.
Okay.
So if I wanted to come in and like get some scribbles going on, I can come in and kind of fill this in, and then I make it really small, and then I can make it bigger to get this fine. And I'm doing all of this without having to switch brushes. Okay, and then if I want to fill this whole thing in with black here, I don't want to have to like just fill it in because I might miss a spot, right? Like
Right.
that scribble fill. So if it's closed off, I can use my magic wand tool, which is W,
Okay.
and I can click on the inside of that. And
Oh.
let me zoom in so you can see that it selects the inside of that. Okay, and then if I go to select and we go to modify, expand, it'll bring this up and you can expand it a few pixels and then it jumps into, let me see if I can, so it jumps in, so it's inside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you can hit delete and jump over to your paint bucket and do this. And it'll kind of give you that. Oh, shoot. Like that. There. Now,
Cool.
that's a lot of different steps. I actually have, let me see if I can hold this up to the camera. Um, I have a thing like this. There we go. That has a bunch of different actions that I've set.
Okay.
And so one of those actions, I push the button. Um, so I've got like fill under, expand fill, um, a bunch of different things like that. And so another one that I can do is I can come over. Let me bring this back out. And I'll show you how to do these actions too. So I'm going to come over here like this. Let's go back to our layers panel. And let me just build this. So I'm just going to finish inking this really quick here. So we just have a solid shape. Okay, so there's our teeth. Yeah. Oh, getting lost. Oh my God. All right, so I got my basic shape. Um, I'm going to hit the inside of this eye, and then I'm going to just press that button and it just fills it in for me. And then I can come in. And then I can come in and I can select the outside of this, and I've got a different action that I've created that will fill underneath and invert. And so what I've done is I selected everything that isn't the skull right now. And so this action, when I press it, fill under, it creates a new layer, and then it inverts the selection, decreases the selection, and then fills the selection. And so now I have
Oh,
a layer that just has this
just
on.
color.
Yeah, and that can be really helpful for a number of reasons. The main one being that if I create another layer on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
I hit Alt and I click in between those layers, it puts that layer. You can't really see that well, but it puts that layer. I forget what this is called, but anyway, you can't color outside of the pixels that are on the layer that it's attached to. And so if I come in like this and I want it to have some blue, then I can come in and I don't have to worry about running outside of that. It's kind of like a mask.
Okay.
So I can come in and I can put in all my shadows and everything, and I don't have to worry a lot about it exceeding. Now, if I jump onto this other one, the main layer that it was attached to, I can still add to that, and it'll expand kind of what's being colored in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you clicked in between layer 32 and 31
Yeah.
to create
So
that.
yeah, let me do that one more time. I'll just delete those. So I'll bring this up. Okay, I've got the outline of my shape here, and I'm going to hit W for the magic wand tool.
Yeah.
I select on the outside. I run my action. That creates a new layer, puts that layer underneath, fills that layer. Okay, and then I create another new layer, which is now 32, and I hold
Mm-hmm.
Alt or Option.
Oh,
And the little icon there, that goes in, is a
okay.
box that has this bent 90-degree arrow pointing down on it. And so when I click in between those two, it applies layer 32 to layer 31, which means that it'll be constrained and it will only show anything that you do that has pixels on the layer that it's attached to.
Okay.
It's like a track mat in After Effects.
Cool.
Yeah, so I could even come in if I wanted to, and I could fill that whole layer. And if I undo this, you can see that whole layer is filled with blue. But then when I attach it to that other layer, it only shows up. And then I can come onto this other layer with like my polygonal lasso tool, and I can say, I want a little hole here, so I'm just making a little selection, and then I just delete that. Okay, and it hasn't deleted this; it's just masked it. And I can stack these two, so I can come up and I can do another one, and on this one I can come in and do like a gradient. And then I can change the blending of those to be whatever, or I can change the opacity of that layer. And I can continue to stack these. So I can have, 5 or 6 different, um, 5 or 6 different things on here where I'm coming in and
Yeah.
doing stuff. And if I take this off of that, you can see that all those layers, they're filled beyond that.
Right.
And then I just attach it. I just attach it to this. So I just click, click, click.
So it's like a clipping mask in Illustrator type of concept a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's much like a clipping mask, except pixel based because it's Photoshop.
Right.
And there are also masks that you can do on layers and on groups of layers. And so another way that I could do this exact same thing is I could come in here like this, and let's go. So I could group these by pressing Command G or by hitting this little folder icon in the layers panel. And then it puts that in a group. And then there's a rectangle with a circle.
Mm-hmm.
That's a mask. I can hit that button. And now anywhere where I paint black, it'll hide. And anywhere where I paint white, it'll show.
Okay.
And so I could come in here and kind of paint this mask in like that. And if I miss, then I can come in and, paint some white.
White. Yeah.
Or, and this is a little bit easier, since I already have that layer, I can hit Command on a Mac or Control on a PC, and then click on the layer icon, and it will select everything that has pixels. And then I can go in, let's say I don't have a mask, okay, on that group, I can select it. And when you create a mask with a selection, that selection is loaded into the mask.
Okay.
And so now anything that I put inside of this folder, like if I jumped over here, and there's an image that I have the rights to or whatever, I could come in like this and paste it inside of that layer.
Right.
Right. And it'll get clipped because it's inside that layer. So okay. 2 different ways to do the same thing. I prefer the first one. Most people use the second one.
Okay. Way cool.
Yeah.
This is good to learn. Okay.
Yeah. So did you have other? We went through a number of questions, and I'm kind of rambling here, but did you have other questions about brushes that you wanted to cover in Photoshop before we jumped over to Fresco? So we did sketching. Did I answer your questions on sketching?
Yes. Yeah, because I was just curious. The opacity made a lot more sense because I was trying to do a few things and I just got frustrated. So the opacity helped a ton. Just as we were doing this, like this maybe is sidetracking a little bit, but in relation to like animation, how do you create, like you have your sketches, how would you keep that sketch style and make animation assets that you could use, I guess?
Yeah.
Do you have to have closed shapes all the time? No.
So anything that you do in any layer that you have in a Photoshop file will show up as a layer when you import it into After Effects.
Okay, so even if it's not closed, you can move that around and.
Oh yeah. So I mean, this is all just one style of illustration. But I mean, if I came in and I had like, where is that? So I've got like this blueprint one, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just a pencil, that I've kind of sketched. But
Right.
if I come in here, I've got, I'm just going to smash these layers. Let's see. I think these are all, yeah. So let's go back to make them darker. So I've got this one layer that has all the sketches, right?
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
wanted to, I could come in and I could say, I'm going to separate this out. So I'm going to take my polygonal lasso tool. I'm gonna hit um, Command X and then Command Shift V, and it'll paste it right back in the same spot. And I'll name that
Okay.
cloud.
So you
Now
just made
because
a new
that's
layer.
now because that's in a different layer,
Mm-hmm.
I can animate it independently of the bird,
Okay.
right? And so I could come in and do the same thing with the bird's head, and come in like this, and,
Right.
and I'll go
Okay.
like that, right? And then I'll go head. Okay, and now when I import that, I could have this head like move around and
Right.
do different things because it's on its own layer. But it's anything that's on that layer. And so these are
Okay.
just pixels. So to After Effects, it doesn't care what's whether it's a closed shape or an open shape or just a bunch of lines or some watercolor texture or a piece of a photograph. Uh,
Okay. Cool.
so really, it's in the separation that you do in those different layers, and then when you bring that into After Effects, anything that's separated can move independently.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, because I'm thinking like Illustrator still. You have to have
Right.
different shapes and okay.
Yeah. So the
No,
difference,
there's
the main difference when you're talking layers panel with Illustrator and Photoshop is that Photoshop, anything you put on a layer, it could be anything, any
yeah,
number of colors or different brushes or whatever, and then you make a new layer and it contains new stuff, right?
yeah.
Whereas in Illustrator, um, when you do a new object or a new path, it automatically defaults to that becoming a new layer.
Right.
And so in Illustrator, it's actually Photoshop. Photoshop imports into After Effects a lot better than Illustrator does.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
and so Illustrator, you kind of have to go through some extra steps of like saying, even though this arm is made out of like 15 different objects, I want you to consider it one thing. And so you have to group it into a high level layer
Yeah.
before you import it into After Effects. But in Photoshop, it'll take your masks, it'll take it takes all the stuff, no matter if those layers are in groups or not. And so if I did this, I have all these different birds that I've done in different groups, and let's hide those tests then. But
Where they're in a group, if you just imported that into After Effects, they would just be one solid image, right?
no, so
Oh.
it imports in as a composition with layers inside of it. So anything in Photoshop that's grouped, any
Oh.
layers in Photoshop that's grouped, they maintain their individual layers, but then they're imported into the group becomes a composition, and so you have
Oh.
compositions within compositions. So it's super helpful.
Yeah.
And you can have so you could have I could have groups within groups within groups, and then when I import that into After Effects, I'd have a series of nested compositions of those
Okay.
layers. And so the way I think of that is I'll do like a group for the eyes, and then a group for the head that includes like both eyes and the nose and the mouth, group for the
Mm-hmm.
mouth, group for the whatever, right? And then if I put those in the right order and I nest them correctly, then when I bring it into After Effects and I move the head composition, all that stuff is already inside of it. But then but then I can go into the eye composition and make it blink, and then come
Right.
back out and turn the head and rotate, that and move it, attach it, and stuff like that.
Oh, this is like opening a whole new world. This is so cool. Okay.
Oh, good.
Cool.
Yeah. Um, so now I can't remember what we were talking about before, but yeah. So
Yeah.
we
Basically
can,
this.
and I can take you through that. But as far as like a sketchy style that
Mm-hmm.
is animated, right? There's a couple different ways to do that. And one is you just draw it the way that you want it to look,
Yeah.
and bring it into After Effects and animate it, right?
Okay.
If you want it to look like each layer is drawn individually, like each frame of the animation is drawn individually, you have to draw it multiple times. Um, and there's a couple cheats and stuff that you can kind of get around that with. The way that I've done it in the past is I'll go in and I'll draw it like 3 times, and then I just rotate through those 3 frames in After Effects, and it just kind of just shows enough deviation that it looks like every frame is hand drawn.
Okay. I don't really know what you mean there, but
Is that something that you want to learn? Because I can show you.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't know if this is veering off too far from what.
this is it is whatever it is. So I'm going to open up a new document here. And let's do 1920 by 1080. Okay, so here's our new document, 1920 by 1080. And I'm going to open a timeline. Okay, and just so that I'm doing this in a way that works for us, I'm going to use a plugin called Timelord. I'm going to open After Effects here. So what Timelord does is it makes it so that you can, whatever you draw in Photoshop is animated in After Effects. So it's a link between After Effects and Photoshop.
Okay.
And so it's something that you can do. So I'm just gonna. Oh, you know what? I probably have something. Let's see. What have I done recently? That would be.
So you could draw something on the same document in Photoshop and it'll automatically.
Oh, you kind of froze. Can you say that again?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it just froze for a minute.
So what I said, so you can draw something on the same layer as like what you already have artwork on in Photoshop, and it'll appear in After Effects, like automatically.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So like what you're seeing on the screen now, I drew that in Photoshop.
Okay.
Right. And I drew each layer in Photoshop. And then I bring it into, I bring it in here, and what you're seeing is that you can kind of, anyway, so let me just show you the finished. So at the end, I've got these guys. Let's make that bigger. So at the end, I've got these guys, and those skulls, there's about 6 or 8 different skulls that I drew for each skull.
Okay.
And it's just rotated just a little bit, and then I just flip through them.
Okay.
So it just kind of like rotates through.
Okay.
And so you have all these, and so let me go new project here. Okay, and then I'll create a new composition, 1920 by 1080, make it 30 seconds long. Okay, and then I'm going to jump over to Photoshop, and one of these buttons, create new timeline from AE comp. Okay, there we go. All right, now we'll just do something simple. We'll zoom in over here. Okay, and let's get out our pencil. Which one it was? This one? Sure, that'll work. Okay, and just for fun, I'm just gonna lighten that up so it's not weird. Well, let's make it. Let's do some toned paper. All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna make a ball bounce, right? So I got this ball up here like this, okay, and then this is where the plugin comes in. I can come in and I can add a new frame. Okay. And then I can also come over here and I can turn on onion skinning. And what onion skinning does is, if you turn it on and off, it shows you the frames just before it and just after it.
Okay.
Right. And so I can say, all right, we're gonna go down here like this. Okay, and then I'll add a new frame. I want this to speed up a little bit, so I'm gonna start elongating it. Add a new frame. And it's gonna go really fast like this. Okay, and then that'll start to kind
Oh,
of, right? New frame, and we'll go just like hyper speed here. And then we'll have it hit the ground. So new frame. I'm going to have this continue here like that, and then splat. So I'll kind of just have some kind of impact with a little bit of rebound. Okay, and I can continue to kind of just see how that works like that. New frame. So we'll have a little bit of this, and we'll have this kind of gather, and then shoot up this direction. New frame. And we'll have it continue like that. New frame. Now we'll have it start like getting bigger as it like reshapes itself.
and can you do this Timelord as well in Illustrator with the shapes as well?
Yeah, but it's a different plugin called Overlord.
Okay.
Yeah, I can show
But
you.
similar type of thing.
Right.
Cool.
And so I've got these drawings, right? And maybe one more here. We'll just have it kind of like slow down and. Okay, so then I can turn onion skinning off. Okay, and I can bring my work area right over the end there, and that'll loop it as I play through. And so when we got that,
cool.
it's like, you know what? That goes a little bit fast. And so I can come in here like this, and I can grab all of these. And this one will make them increase frame length, make them last longer. And so let's say we go 2 frames instead of 1 frame. And I'm going to change the background color. So you can see it's going a little bit better.
Cool. That's way cool.
Right? And then you can have multiple layers. So I could come in here. This is just a sketch, right?
Yeah.
I could come in here and I could I could come in here and I could color this. I could fill it in. I could come in and there's this one that's duplicate blank layer, and it makes a copy of all those with the same timing.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can come in and I can say, all right, so I'm going to have like, just a little shadow on each one of these. Turn the onion skinning back on. Why? Oh, it's probably multiple. Oop, okay. Oh my gosh, sorry. Wrong one. Here's what I get for working on my onion skinning. There we go. And take multiply and go normal. All right. So then I can go here and I can go in and I can color each one of these. And it'll do that. But it's layered. So that's one way to do it, right? And I would take this.
Right.
There's a button you push here. I gotta save this first. So save this as Google here. Go here. Compound is fine, I guess. So. Okay. So then I can push this button. Do that. And it brings this in. So now I have this. Oh, comp size. Okay, so now I have this composition here, and you'll notice that it has spread out all of those layers
Mm-hmm.
I had in Photoshop, the frames that I did, and it puts them as 2 frames a piece here.
Okay.
And so if I wanted like some of these to last a little bit longer or whatever, I could actually come in, right? And I could change the length of those, reset the timing, do whatever I want with those things, and it'll continue to do that.
Okay.
But each one of these also still have like position, rotation, and all that stuff. Oh, you can't see what I'm looking at. Let me do this instead. So each one of these still have all of the transform controls, and so
Right.
each each frame you could rotate it a little bit. You could turn up or down the opacity. So that's one way. Okay.
Cool.
The
Yeah.
other way, and this is I don't think I invented this, but I don't see this happen a lot. I'm just gonna hide these. This I really like, and so I'm gonna come in and let's create a new layer. And I'll just delete these. And shrink that down to 1. Okay. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do one shape, and then I'm going to draw it 3 times. Okay, intentionally not being accurate, like perfectly accurate. Okay, so we'll just do like a little triangle here. Okay, with like a circle on the inside. Okay, and then I'm going to make a new one. Okay, and I'm going to go over that again and not exactly trace it, but I'll be close. Okay, and then one more time. Okay, now I'm just going to delete these other layers. Okay, so now I have this, and I'll turn onion skinning off. Let's look at that. And when it plays, it's like way too fast.
Like jiggles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
jiggly. So I'm just going to time that out so it's not so quick.
How cool.
Okay, so there's that. And I could do 5 of those or 6 of those, whatever, but we'll do 3 for right now. Okay, and then I'm going to push that over. And I'll import that on comp size. Okay, so we'll go into comp 3 here. Let's see. Is that now? Where'd the one go that we just? Is this it? Where is it? Pushed it. Let's just delete all this. We'll do it again. Delete. Photoshop. This is where you name things, and I'm not naming them. There we go. Okay, Timelord. We'll comp 5. Oh, because I know why. Save it. It imports the saved file. So
Oh.
delete this. And then I'll come over and now okay, it's going to play it one time. Okay, so here's the trick that I came up with. Okay, I've got these 3 frames like that, and
Yeah.
they end at frame 6, right? And so I'm going to come back over here, and you right click on this, and you go time, enable time remapping. And then I'm going to add that right there so that I have one keyframe at 0 and one keyframe at 6 frames. and then I delete this one at the end. I'll click and I add a loop out expression. And then it just continues to loop through those three keyframes.
Okay.
And
That
so,
is way cool.
and here's where it gets really, really cool. Okay, so we've got this object and it looks hand drawn, but because I still have all the transform controls, okay, I can come in here and I can animate it. And so I can come in and I can move this around, right?
Right.
And I don't have to do a frame by frame animation because you know it's animated, right? And
Right.
I can have it get bigger and smaller and all that type of stuff. Anyway, it's pretty cool because once you do it like this, um, you have an asset uh, that looks like it's hand sketched on every frame, but you can save yourself the time of uh, doing that. So like this, and I'll rotate it right here. Uh, right, and so
Right.
this can be a really fun style.
Yeah, I think I'll play around with that a little bit just to try out some brushes and then try out some of this animation as well.
Yeah,
Try out some of this. Cool.
yeah, that's how I did the skull one, and it
Oh, really?
yeah, I think it turned out because I colored it. I colored each layer in um, Photoshop,
Yeah.
but then when you get into it, you can see um, that each one of these is so that's the mask. Where's the skull? Is that the skull? Yeah. So go in here. So then you go over here, and I've just got it, and it just ends, right? So I just did that looping thing. So I did that about 20 frames, and I just have the inks on one layer and the colors in another layer,
Okay.
and then I just brought that in, put it into this, and then this has a time remap with a loop out on the time remap, and then everything else is just normal layers in After Effects.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, is your brain full, or do you want me to show you? I don't know. I don't know how long you have, but I can show you um, Fresco in the iPad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's go to Fresco. That would be great. Yeah, you've answered all of my questions that I've had with Photoshop and with animation too. So,
Oh, okay. And if you've got more, I can stay on Photoshop or animation.
yeah. No, I think we're good there. And if I have more as I work through, I can, yeah, let you know and
Okay.
we can meet again.
All right. So let's jump over here like this.
Okay.
So this is the iPad. Okay, and this is a program called Fresco. It just says FR down here,
Mm-hmm.
and it is it's built to work with Photoshop, um, but it has a lot of things. So like this is the pencil, and you can already see like the
Oh, yeah.
pencil is a way better pencil engine uh, in here than anything I've found in Photoshop. Except for that, I think it is the Tilterific that they've kind of like imported in.
Right.
If I shade a little bit or if I push harder, right,
That's
it
so
all
cool.
just works really well. So I really like it.
Hmm.
Um, and so and that's just under the sketching pencil. And then you also have you've got basic, so it's got a lot of the same stuff. You got charcoal, right? So I could come in here and I could do kind of some charcoal work,
Okay. Yeah.
right? Changing the color and all that. But then it also has like, you got like ink stuff. So here's like a wet ink.
Okay. Yeah.
It's got like a chisel brush. Um, and then you get into like markers. I'll have to change the color here. Right. And so you've got some of these, but then the others are going to be more, um, like translucent.
Yeah.
Um, and you can also, the nice thing is you can also come in and with Fresco, it will also take Photoshop brushes. And so any ABRs, you can import those as well.
Okay.
So you can come into here, hit this plus button, discover new brushes, and it'll go to the same spot, and you just download it and put it. Okay, so that's the
Okay.
basic stuff. Then you get these other two brushes. One is called a live brush, and the other is called a vector brush. And so if you use a vector brush, it will actually create vector paths that will import into Illustrator,
Okay.
right? And so I can
Yeah.
come in and go basic taper, change my color here to whatever. And then when I draw this, that is a vector path. You can't really do much editing or anything with it here, but
But you can import it. And
and it has all the anchor points
mm,
and everything that you'd need to be able to do stuff with that.
cool.
Then the coolest part about this, beside these, is the live brushes. And so they have two categories. You've got watercolor and you've got oil. And so if we go into I'll do the oil first because it's not as cool as the watercolor. But I go into the oil, and I can come in. Can't draw on a hidden layer, so I new layer. Okay, I can come in like this, and then I can come in and choose a different color, and it mixes. So you notice
Well, yeah.
notice right there, it's kind of like mixing. Okay, and these different oil brushes, like I could come in and do different colors, and it
It'll
mixes,
mix.
right? And so
Yeah.
it's just like painting.
Oh,
And so
so
if I
cool.
was mixing paint, like I could come in here and kind of mix some of that, and then take a sample of that, and mix some of that over here, right? And then take a sample of that, and then mix some of that over here, mix some of that over here, add some more red, and you can start to get like a really interesting looking kind of palette.
Yeah. And not have to deal with real paint. This is great.
Yeah. So I'm not much of a painter, but this is it's cool, and there's a bunch of different there's glaze and chunky and all kinds of different stuff. So
Cool.
that's pretty neat. The
Yeah.
best thing though, I think, is the watercolor. Um,
Yeah.
and so if you go to watercolor, there's a couple of these. Let me hide this layer and start a new one. Did I not choose? There we go. So you can come in and you'll notice that it works. It kind of bleeds a little bit.
Okay.
What it's doing is if I were to come in here like this and turn this pigment down, it looks like nothing's happening. What I'm actually doing is I'm getting that part of the layer wet.
Okay. So it's just like adding water when you're painting with watercolor.
Right. And I can come in and I can add a little bit of pigment and do kind of a translucent, and I can start kind of mixing that in.
Oh, cool.
Right. And there's different brushes. So I can go like a soft wash. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. And you notice that the edges here,
Yeah, they fade into each other, and
yeah, and it behaves much like real water does. And so
this is so cool.
yeah. So this is one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite ways to color things, because I can have one layer on the top, right, where I just come in. I just come in with one of these brushes, one of these normal kind of inking brushes. I can't remember what I use here, but probably something like this one. So I'll just come in and I'll do, my basic kind of ink lines and all that stuff. And then I put that on the top, and then I can color underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the cool part about this is you can also use the same techniques you can use the same techniques that we learned in the Photoshop thing. And so I could come in, let's hide this for a minute. So let's say that I'll do a quick thing. So we're going to do our little triangle. So we'll get our triangle here like this with the circle, and we can do like whatever shading we're doing and all that jazz. Have whatever detail we want. Okay, and then we'll make a layer underneath that. And I'll just use my polygonal lasso tool here. Kind of just fill this in. So I'm going to just come in like that. Okay, and then on the layer underneath, let's just say we want to make it light blue. And so we'll fill that with a light blue. Okay, and here's where it gets cool. A layer on top of that, and you see this button over here? It's got the square with the bent arrow. That's the same thing. It applies that layer to that. And so now I could come in with my watercolor brushes.
And have it stay within the edges.
Right.
Wow.
And so I can come in and I can just color this. Okay. And what's really happening is it's going all over the place, but I apply it to that. And you can control where it goes. And so then you can come in and get, some really cool looking, coloring things going on. And you still have the option to come in and do blending options. So we could do darken or multiply or screen or overlay, all that stuff.
Cool.
So Fresco is pretty cool.
Can you import? So let's say you made your sketches already in Photoshop and you just have your outline, like an ink outline.
Mm-hmm.
Can you import that into Fresco and do your coloring and stuff?
Yeah.
There.
So the lower left-hand corner, you can create new or you can import and open.
Okay.
And so if I pressed import and open, it's going to ask me, do you want to import a Photoshop file? I'll say, yeah, I want to import a Photoshop file. And it's recently deleted, but you just get it on your cloud drive or on your iPad or whatever. You just have to get it to your iPad. Okay. It seems to work a little bit better coming from Fresco to Photoshop, but they both work in PSD, and so you're both Fresco and Photoshop use a Photoshop document file format.
Okay.
And so in the Photoshop here, I can come in and I've got all these Photoshop files. But you notice this one that we just created in Fresco is also showing up an option to open in Photoshop.
Okay.
And so,
because it is a PSD file.
Right. And so because I'm signed into the same Adobe account on my iPad that I am on my desktop, so when I make something on my desktop and I save it to the Adobe cloud, then I can go in on my iPad and open that up from the Adobe cloud, and I can make edits to it and it'll update it, and then I can go back to my desktop and I can open that and update that as well.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. I mean, this is where I'm doing the what do you call it? Storyboards and stuff.
Yeah.
It just depends on whether I'm out and about, I'll use my iPad, or whether I'm at my workstation, I'll use my Cintiq. And the nice thing about it is because it's cloud based, I'm working on the same file back and forth.
Right.
They haven't figured out a good desktop version of Fresco yet. There is a PC Fresco app that you can do, but it's not great. It's okay.
Okay, so it wouldn't have like the same cool watercolor stuff.
No, it does. It just feels like you're using a mobile app on a desktop.
Okay.
So it expects you to be able to have like touch sensitivity with your fingers and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, it's not useless. I do like it, but it's a little clunky on the desktop, whereas on the iPad it works great.
Okay.
So, but anyway, those are the main things.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can show you. Do you want to see anything else on brushes or sketching or animation or anything else? Or
I don't know. Not that I can think of right now.
okay,
Um. Yeah, I don't know.
okay, well that's cool. Yeah, we'll play with that stuff, and we can always revisit it and come back. But see, are you gonna try to use the Timelord um, plugin?
Yeah. 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 Actually, I think I will try that out. Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple videos. I have a couple videos
Hmm.
on the Time Lord thing, but try it out and then let's do this again, and I can walk you through any questions you have or anything along those lines.
Yeah, and get some feedback on what I create and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
that would be awesome.
Cool. Yeah, and then Overlord is the Illustrator to After Effects connection.
Okay.
And what you'll need to be aware of with that, two things basically. When you're putting stuff back and forth, um, and I can do this, or I can just show you, or I'll just tell you that right now. But when you're putting stuff back and forth, um, you can uh, import the whole thing over, or just import the stuff that's selected. And if you're just
Okay.
importing the stuff that's selected, you can do that in two ways. One where it makes a new shape layer in from the path that's selected in Illustrator. It creates a new shape layer in After Effects.
Okay.
The other one is if you turn on animation by clicking the stopwatch, so you're putting keyframes down, and you
Hmm.
move your playhead to a place that doesn't have a keyframe, then you can select a path in Illustrator, and when you push that over through Overlord, it creates a new keyframe on that path, and
Okay.
so it animates. Does that make sense? I can show
Yeah.
you. I can show you in like 2 minutes if you want to see that.
Sure. Yeah. That. Yeah. Go ahead and show me that. That would work. But I can kind of see what you're saying there.
Yeah. So let me just open Illustrator. But basically, yeah. So basically, you make stuff
Mm.
in Illustrator, push it into After Effects. You can do whatever you want to it. But the other option is stuff that is in After Effects can be edited by this plugin with Illustrator instead of trying to edit it in After Effects. So we pull
Okay.
this back up.
So, like, let's just say with that 1950s retro cup that I had,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm gonna create the like rubber hose arms kind of so that I can try out that rubber hose.
Okay.
Um, anyways, so like if I imported just the cup and then created the arms later, I would just do it on that same
I
file.
always I always do it on a different document,
Okay.
um, and my reason for that is just the way that After Effects deals with saved changes, especially when it's vector. It,
Okay.
it always kind of messes it up a little bit. So you can make
Okay.
a copy of that original document and then do whatever you need to do over the top of it, and then
Okay.
save that copy and import it. I think that would be better. So this is Overlord, this little plugin like this, and I can just select this stuff here, and then there's these little options over here, and so it's like, do you want the center points to be at the center? Do you want to split the shapes into layers? Blah blah blah, all that stuff. So I'm going to take split shapes into layers off, and I'm going to push this over. Okay, and you'll notice that it brought it into After Effects. But when I open this up and I go into contents, each one of the paths is its own path, right? So each one of the layers that I had over here, right, turned into its own object inside of the shape layer here.
Okay.
But then I can come in and I can say, let's zoom in on this. Let's make this whole thing bigger. So we'll just scale this up. Okay, so we've got this, and which, let's go to content here. I1. Okay, so we'll just now let's do something bigger. What's this one? Let me just find. Where's the?
Sorry, can you turn the our cameras off so I can see what you're doing right down in that?
Wrong button. That one.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
All right. So I'm just coming in trying to find which one I want to mess with here. Main outline. Let's go eye outside. Or let's do the green one. Okay. So this green one is the one that we're going to mess with. So I'm going to come in into path. Okay. And I've just twirled into that shape. I'm going to turn that on. And now I could in After Effects come in and mess with this, right? I could come in and just adjust this After Effects, right? And it would animate that. Okay. But I could also come in, okay, and jump back over to this file. I'm going to grab this shape. And because it's easier to control things in Illustrator, oops, he says as he ruins it, I can come in and do whatever I want there, okay? And then I select that. And here's the trick, is I want to make sure I've got this path turned on, it's selected. So you've got to select that path. And then I can jump over and I push that shape and it becomes a new keyframe.
Okay. So then it would change.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the keyframe was created, the shape of that keyframe was created in Illustrator. But anyway, so you can come in and with that you can do all kinds of different tweening animations. And the nice thing is I don't have to draw 20 frames because this is taking 20 frames to go through that animation. It's just 3 things that I did. And so anyway, so that can be kind of nice, just to kind of connect that way. And if you look at this robe, that's what I did with this robe. I initially tried to draw every frame, and it just got too complicated, and I realized that I could probably do it better, in After Effects. And so I just took those main keyframes, those main changes, and I just went in and drew them in Illustrator, imported them into After Effects, and then they became that layer.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So 2 different ways to do it. Overlord and Timelord are both really cool.
Okay.
If you're doing stuff that changes shape a lot, like drips and things like that, sometimes Timelord is just way easier. Though it's more time consuming because you're doing more drawings.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Okay, go play with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend time doing that. Sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And for all the people that have made it this far into the video, if you're interested in learning more about this stuff and you didn't understand a lot of what was going on, I have all kinds of playlists. You can go to corykerr.com /videos. And if you go to AI to AE, that'll teach you how to animate stuff in Adobe After Effects. If you want to learn Adobe Illustrator, my vector graphics tutorial playlist will take you from knowing nothing about Illustrator to knowing quite a bit about it. So both of those playlists will kind of catch you up. And then I have some tutorials on Timelord and Rubber Hose and other things. And you can watch me do a lot of this stuff live if you look at let's see, 100 Days of Animation or Breaking the Chains. There's a couple different playlists that I did where you can do some of those things. Okay, and we'll catch you guys later.